Oh, hey, I can't tell my friend, or I can't tell, my investor syndicate, or I can't tell my partner, but I love what you guys are doing, and it's the best use case application I've seen, and you guys are going to achieve my scale adoption, and it's the best, and I'm going to put some money in secretly,
But
and
don't tell anybody.
yeah, but don't tell anyone. A lot of people fear what other people will think. I mean, I always thought I was pretty open-minded, but I actually think pretty much everyone out there is pretty open-minded.
There's not really a jizz coin, is there?
Yes,
Oh my
there is.
God.
Yes, there is.
Oh my goodness.
Hello, this is Leah speaking.
Oh, hi, Leah. This is Gabe.
Hey, how you going?
Your voice is so professional. I thought I had your voicemail.
I get that a lot. My full name is Leah Callon-Butler. I'm a co-founder of Internet.io, and I've worked in technology all my life. I have always been really fascinated with how technology can change people's lives, but I guess I was just kind of looking for that thing that was going to capture my imagination that I really want to fall in love with and spend a long time with, for the rest of my life. I came across blockchain via the Brooklyn Microgroup, which is the consensus project. I'm sure lots of people will be familiar with.
Give us a sense of like what year is it, or when could be what month? When was this? When did you first hear about the blockchain?
Okay, so I was sitting with a mentor of mine, and it would have been, I think it must have been like February 2017. So yeah, like not a bit over a year ago, really. I was sitting and I was actually ranting to him about the time that I'd spent working in the renewable energy sector. And I left that industry in a huff. I was really frustrated that people were seeing renewable energy as basically just alternative energy, not really the way of the future. And I couldn't see how that was ever really going to change as long as the energy markets were set up the way that they were, which was essentially, controlled by the energy producers. And I was like, how are people ever going to kind of change this economic paradigm if they're not given the power to do so? It was also a market or an industry where the people's desire for change and their vision to be able to shape the future in the way that we produce and consume and share energy was so much more forward thinking than the market itself could be.
Okay, awesome. So that's first sort of discovering the power of the blockchain. Maybe you can tell us the story of finding your co-founders, and then tell us what is Intimate and what you guys are creating.
Yeah, I guess to lead off from where I just was, I became really interested in this idea of where is blockchain needed. And I was actually really excited about talking to you today because you asked me to go and listen in on some of the conversations that you've been having recently too. And I actually totally agree with where you've been going in your conversations about that idea that blockchain is it's like this technology crying out for a use case.
Yeah.
And I'm still really interested in energy applications, but yeah, I kind of went on this weird journey, like going, okay, well, blockchain's so hot right now, everyone's applying it to everything.
And just for the record, you've listened to some more recent podcasts. I think we're about 35 episodes in, and I think I've gotten a little bit more sort of cynical. When the first 5 or 10 are right up there with the hype. I'm so excited, and so anyway.
I think it's good though. It's really good to have that level-headedness, and I think it's important to have a healthy level of skepticism as well. If you really believe in a technology and its potential, you've also got to ask all the hard questions as well as the exciting ones.
Yeah.
And that was where I was going with it, because I, even at the early stage, like this was sort of more than 12 months ago, And crypto moves pretty fast, right? So, 12 months ago, it's like a lifetime ago.
A lot's happened.
But yeah, I was starting to see that just people were racing to apply it to everything, and I saw too that this was a technology with a lot of potential, but it also had a long way to go. So I felt that it was really important that we found the perfect use case to be able to prove its potential before rushing to apply it to anything and everything. So yeah, I just became a bit of a sponge and was excited to draw up every little piece of information I could possibly get. I've always been interested in blockchain as a planet-saving technology. So I guess I started out with energy, but then I became really interested in its applications to developing economies, and coupled with things like microfinance products and even self-sovereign identity. Actually, as a side note, through that little piece of my journey and finding all the people who are doing wonderful things with blockchain in the space of saving the world, I met, I don't know if you've heard of her, but a phenomenal woman called Dr. Jane Thomason.
I have not. No.
Yeah, you've got to look her up. She's awesome. I can introduce you. But she was basically like a celebrity in the space of public health, but soon kind of redirected her focus to the opportunity to apply blockchain to a lot of her areas of study. And I met her along that way when we were both speaking at a WWF charity event. That's the not the wrestling foundation. But anyway, so sorry, I'm going down a tangent. But I was really interested in the space of, well, how can blockchain help people, and not just be a technology that's used for finance and efficiency, but also how can it empower people. And it was through this journey that my co-founder Nathan Smale, we'd been friends beforehand. We'd been working together in the space of technology. We were both kind of working in the space of retail technology. And Nathan and Ruben had built a business earlier in their lives, so they'd been longtime friends. Ruben Copper, our CEO, he had been involved with a company that introduced the first Bitcoin ATMs to Australia. And he'd also been working in the space of consulting to large corporates in Australia that were interested in applying blockchain tech. He often laughs and says it's quite funny because they rarely actually applied or implemented any blockchain projects, because there was usually another technology that already existed that could meet the goals of the project quicker and faster and cheaper than blockchain could.
I love how you're setting this up so well, referencing our previous episode, which really was like the complete, why not use other technologies than the blockchain? And you're leading us towards a real problem that the blockchain can be a real solution for.
I don't know what would make you think that, but yeah. So he'd been running his business, and it was Ruben had thought many years ago that there were lots of parallels between this work that he'd done in crypto, trying to bring it to the masses early on. So this company that he was involved with that brought Bitcoin ATMs to Australia, it was really kind of ahead of its time. But the idea was that they put ATMs in Westfield shopping centres in Australia and help people access crypto more easily. But he ran into all these difficulties in banking, essentially. And literally having to, move large amounts of cash in bags down the road and try to put them into bank accounts. Yeah, so to actually run this business. So without going into great detail with that, it was very, very clunky when it came to banking, because crypto was still not recognized as mainstream systems. And it was very difficult to run that business. At the same time, he had founded another company called Rendezvous, which is essentially like Uber for escorts. And he'd done that because he saw an opportunity in the market to be able to address a lot of issues with that type of service.
So Rendezvous was an Uber for escorts. Was that legal in Australia at the time, or how are they dealing with that?
Yeah, completely decriminalised, as it is in the UK as well.
Got it. Okay. Well, yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, just to be clear, you're in London. I'm in the good old United States of America, founded by the founded by the Puritans.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, a lot of people don't even realize that that escort work or sex work is decriminalized in other countries because, and even in their own country, if you're based in Australia or the UK, it's amazing how a lot of people don't realize that. And that's because this type of work is still so socially excluded. So I guess I'll get to that in a second. That will make sense. But yeah, Ruben saw this opportunity to create essentially like an Uber for escorts. And the reason for that was because at the time in the industry, and still very much so today because the problems still exist, but it was very difficult for both workers or service providers to link up with customers, to be able to validate their reputation, to establish trust, to be able to transact and pass through payment. Because these industries were essentially forced to operate in the shadows. And the internet had helped a little bit with this in the space of providing online platforms where people could connect with customers or service providers. But often the thing that would actually prevent people from really establishing trust between two parties was the ability to make payment. And there was a big trade-off there in that customers wanted to be able to transact privately, but service providers needed the trust that would come from being able to assess somebody's reputation or establish trust through the act of data disclosure. So you've kind of got this weird dichotomy where you need to be able to establish what I would say an oxymoron, which is anonymous trust, which wasn't able to be done at that time. But Ruben, like at that early stage, had thought, hey, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if you could put crypto and adult together to solve their two problems? But it was just way too early on. I mean, we're talking 3 or 4 years ago, and adult is obviously taboo and crypto was taboo. So it wasn't really until October last year where we had this kind of sweet spot. When I was first introduced to Ruben, it was Nathan who introduced us because Ruben had come to Nathan and said, look, I've got this idea. I've been waiting for the right moment. The moment is now because finally crypto is mainstream, that at least one of the two isn't, completely excluded from mainstream society. But I need the right team to make it happen. And they were sitting there talking about their ideas, and Nathan knew that I was incredibly passionate about crypto and blockchain's ability to save the world, and introduced me to Ruben, and I guess the rest is history, as they say.
I wasn't sure. I wanted to ask you this when I kind of like read the top level information about your company. I wasn't sure if it was like adult industry got that sort of, but then I wasn't sure if it was like paying for porn with crypto, or kind of like a market of like sex toys, or if it actually was like escorts where a physical exchange can happen for money. And I guess like maybe help clarify that, but I'm really curious. You guys just raised around like $5 million so far, and you've got an ICO coming up. I'm curious, I mean, like crypto is probably a little bit less taboo than adult, but there's probably more people involved in adult than in crypto. I don't know, but like I'm curious, like when you go into this kind of a taboo-ish industry, how do you personally approach potential investors? Like what's the positioning? Do you just kind of smell out who's going to be not receptive to it and just don't approach them, or do you be really direct and upfront, or just kind of like what's that been like raising the money so far?
Well, there's a few questions there, but I think the first point was that you raised. You weren't really sure, like, what is this? I mean, the adult industry, is it porn? Is it toys? Is it escort services? What is it? Our definition of the adult industry is incredibly broad, and we encompass all of the above, everything you mentioned, plus Japanese love hotels and the manufacture and design and retail of novelties and even dating, things like Tinder and Grindr. So we actually encompass all of that in our system, and I can talk a little bit more about how it applies to various use cases later. But the reason that we include them all is because of the problems that exist in this industry with, firstly, payments, but also the establishment of trust. So what a lot of people are actually really surprised to find out is that the issues here are rife. So we're talking about legal, tax-paying entities. I'm not incorporating anything at all that would even be remotely deemed as illegal. So we only work with businesses that are completely legal within their jurisdiction.
Okay.
And these businesses are excluded from some of the most basic banking products and payment services because of their industry. And I'm not just talking, say, pornography platforms or even escort agencies. I'm talking, female entrepreneurs who have launched an app to help women track their reproductive health, for example. So these kind of businesses, they all fall into the sex bucket, which is deemed morally wrong, or it's somebody gets to pass judgment on these businesses whether they think they should be allowed to access banking products or not. Now, I don't know about you, but I certainly did not make banks the moral arbiter of society. I don't really think they're in a good place to be able to make a moral judgment about whether a business should be able to do business or not. But if you remove the adult label from this industry, people would see that as extortion. You can't not provide banking and payment services to a legal tax-paying entity, but apparently in this industry you can.
These companies literally are they're incorporated sort of like, let's say in England, and everything is up front with the government, everything is legit, but the banks are still saying, just because you're in this taboo industry, we're not going to fund you.
Yep.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing. So to give you an example, if you want to go and look them up, there is an organization called the Women of Sex Tech. They're a global organization. I'm a member. It's a really cool group of women who have all launched businesses. It includes everything from pornographers such as Erica Lust or Cindy Gallop, who is really well known in this space. She founded a platform called Make Love Not Porn, which is all for social sex, right through to sexual educators and women like Estrella Jamolero, who has launched an app called BWOM, which is all about women's sexual health. Every single one of these women globally have experienced issues with accessing some of the most basic banking products. When they go in to speak to the bank, they have to be careful about what they tell them they do, what industry they're in, what types of customers they serve, what types of products they have, because they could be socially excluded. Many of them are used to being charged exorbitant fees. They could have their accounts frozen without warning. It's shocking. Like, this is going on every single day across this industry. And let me reiterate again, these are legal tax-paying businesses. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing. And yet the bank reserves the right to be able to refuse them services or charge them extortionate fees.
I've got so many questions. Like, how do you even assess the size of? How do you even assess that as a pitching a new company? How do you even assess the size of the market? Where do you get the data research?
That's a great question, and I wish I could tell you what the size of this market is. Like, it's near impossible. We have tried to do so much research, but it also makes it really difficult because we really encompass everything. So, there's stats out there around what is the value of the adult online content market. There's certainly stats around things like novelties and sex toys. But then there's other things too. We encapsulate a huge and growing part of the market, which is adult dating. And that is sometimes monetized, sometimes not. So things like sugar daddy and seeking arrangement sites are obviously heavily monetized, but then there's also places within this market where it's not about money at all, and that might be something like, Happen or Bumble or Tinder, where people are still hooking up in the real world and need a solution to be able to establish trust and perhaps even protect their privacy or provide pseudonymity so that they can interact with other parties without it proliferating every other component of their lives. And to date, there isn't really a solution. So that makes it really difficult for us to be able to value our market, because often there is actually value there which is not necessarily monetized right now, but if people did have a solution for trust and reputation within those spaces, they may well wish to pay for that.
A friend for the last 25 years has a podcast called Sex and Love Podcast. So I'll just do a quick shout out for her. But she's a sex therapist, and so she's actually been a really good source of information around just the complexity of all this stuff, and how, like, the theme that she was mentioning to me when I mentioned to her I'd have you on as a guest was the depth of the levels of like sexual repression, especially in the United States, probably around the world, where it's taboo basically in a lot of ways to even talk about it, let alone explore these areas. I still want to. I'm just curious. Like, did you have any, as you're having business meetings and raising money for this? Like, was there any particularly awkward exchanges?
Not really. Oh, well, I mean, it doesn't go without its how do I say this? I guess I've got a bit of a thick skin, to be honest. Like, we definitely have had pushback, but overall, we've actually been received really well. I think the fact that our marketing, our branding is extremely different, and we're very proud of that, and we stick to it as a company. It's been actually pretty easy to establish our competitive advantage in this space. We approach this industry for the business case that it is, with absolute utmost respect for the people who work within it and the consumers who wish to transact with it. And we use articulate, intelligent, respectful language, which you would think that's just pretty standard in any business case. But, I mean, our competitors in this space are named things like, Bitcoin and Jizzcoin and Big Boobs Coin.
There's not really a Jizzcoin, is there?
Yes,
Oh
there is.
God.
Yes, there is.
Oh,
and the list goes on. So I think, we're not here to disparage our competitors. I think there's a massive problem to be solved here in the adult industry, and crypto is a great solution for it. So we welcome all of the attention that could possibly come from any other people who are smart and understand crypto and how it could be applied to solve the problems here. There's going to be no silver bullet, and we believe in the opportunity to actually emancipate the people who are suffering within this space and who have been neglected for so long. But at the same time, it's about just treating it as a business case that it is, and doing it intelligently and respectfully. We have been received really well by large crypto funds. Alphabet, for example, put in a large stake. And it's that kind of credibility that we've been really proud to receive, because they've seen that we're doing things in a different way. Alphabet, for example, they said that they really believed that what we'd identified was the use case that crypto had been waiting for and would be the first to achieve mass scale adoption.
And just to clarify for people, it's Alphabet, B-I-T, not Larry and Sergey's Alphabet.
Yeah, if you want to mishear that, that's fine. But like,
they still have money.
Not alphabet, but alphabet. But no, they've been brilliant. They were introduced to us through Michael Turpin, who is our lead strategic advisor from Transform PR. And yeah, I mean, it was that kind of recognition and credibility that we are very proud to receive, but also not that surprised. We stand aside from, I think, a lot of other people who have come through this space and, seen it as a lifestyle opportunity. We don't. We really believe that the adult industry is just the industry that has the biggest pain points right now for things like transactions, payments, and the establishment of trust.
Yeah.
What we're building to address the problems within the adult industry will apply to every other industry in the future. I mean, look at what's happening with Facebook at the moment. It's beautiful for us because it's causing people to have a mainstream conversation around the importance of data privacy and voluntary disclosure of your own personal information and ensuring that you have control over that data the whole time. I mean, really, at its core essence, that's what intimate is about. So we're pretty excited that we're getting that kind of mainstream exposure and causing people to think about, well, who controls your information and should they?
So this leads to a very recent sort of political issue that affects society in the U.S. particularly. I'm reading a headline right now that's from 6 days ago. Trump signs controversial anti-sex trafficking bill. And you probably know more about this than I do, but I'll try to quickly summarize. Basically, this basically made it illegal for a lot of websites to, say, hey, we're just hosting, people posting, their personals or their ads on here. We're not responsible for the transaction. But now this law makes it more difficult for people in the adult industry to post. And the criticism, well, I think somebody told me that it was like a 98-2 overwhelmingly in the Senate, voted for because it's supposed to stop, sex trafficking, which is taking, usually young women against their consent, and forcing them into the sex trade. But I guess the opposition side of that is like suddenly there's sites like Backpage where you could post ads, and there's Craigslist, which removed its personals, that are kind of being shut down. And the issue is that this creates, sending people back on the streets, or maybe give it. I mean, this sounds like this is a great example for like why you would want this on the blockchain, but also the strong moral sort of arguments or feelings against it.
Yeah. So this is huge, what you've just touched on right now. So this is only kind of unfolding over the last couple of weeks, but I think it's been coming for a long time. And I've got to be honest with you, it frightens the hell out of me. Mm-hmm. I do believe what's happened is unconstitutional, and I think there will be a challenge, but whether it takes 6 months or 6 years, who knows? But basically what's happened is Section 230 was removed from these two bills, and Section 230 was what previously protected sites like Backpage when they were sued for their involvement in things like, or their alleged involvement in things like human trafficking. So we could really go down a rabbit hole with things like that, and I'm not really here to judge whether Backpage is guilty or not. But my real concern with this is that Section 230 came about in the early 90s, and basically what it was designed to do is protect free speech on the internet. It was seen that the internet would never be allowed to grow and scale if people weren't able to congregate within forums and say whatever they wish. And the way that they ensured that the internet would scale like that was to make sure that the businesses that host these forums would not be held liable for what people say on those sites. So essentially, whatever happened with user-generated content, if it was linked to illegal activity, then it wouldn't be the website's fault. So once this was removed, this is why we started to see things like, well, first Backpage was seized, Craigslist and Reddit have shut down complete forums. The law also says that this can be applied retroactively and globally. So this is why a lot of the sites have been so aggressive in completely removing content. I read the other day that I think even Kindle removed a large part of their erotic literature section. What's horrifying, actually, is that I just heard from a girl this morning that she'd woken up and found that her entire Google Drive account had been deleted overnight.
Wait, explain what could that possibly have been? I don't follow.
So she had adult content, so her own files held privately on her Google Drive, and I'd heard about this happening, but I wasn't sure if it was really true. But she was talking about it today on a Telegram channel that I was in, and I had to follow up and say, like, whoa, is this really real? Did this really happen? She said, yeah, like I woke up this morning and all of my content on Google was gone.
And this is a reaction, you think, from Google to this law?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because Google could be held liable. And basically what's happening here is that the law, what they're saying they're trying to do is that, human trafficking is real, and it's an absolute global atrocity, and it's happening every day, and probably closer to your life than you would like to admit or realize. And obviously people want to be able to do something about it. But with this particular law, what they're doing is they're kind of saying that anything to do with sex work is human trafficking, and that it all comes under this one umbrella, and that the best way to fight it is to move it off the internet, so that people essentially can't scale their human trafficking businesses. Now, this is, I think, really dangerous because now that things like Backpage and Craigslist and Reddit, they have been removed, well, now we actually can't see human trafficking victims.
Yeah.
Those were often the sites where people were actually able to locate and save their family members. I mean, the global trade is not going to go away because they can't do it online. They will just do it elsewhere now, and I think it's far less visible. But a bigger problem about this is actually the rhetoric that exists, that there is currently no framework for people to be able to distinguish between consensual, legal, tax-paying work, which is somebody's choice. And a lot of people say, women would never choose to go down the line of sex work. Well, actually, I know a lot of people who have chosen that as their career choice, and they absolutely love it, and they're great at it, and they really enjoy their work. Plenty of other people who do it just because they need to put food on the table. But that is very, very, very different to human trafficking. And the problem at the moment is we don't actually have a method for the real world to be able to distinguish the difference between the two. And I think that's causing two problems. Firstly, it's causing stigmatization and social exclusion for very good actors within society who would like to be able to just go on with their work and be contributing members of society. And at the same time, it's diverting the law enforcers' time and resources to chasing people that don't need law enforcing. It's not actually allowing us to identify the people who need to be brought to justice and allowing us to address this horrendous issue and actually solve it. It's just it's just saying that all sex is bad and let's just all put it in one bucket and essentially penalize everyone. And I think that it's like our world is going backwards, and I think it's really frightening. The narrative out there is that people who do work in this industry, whether they're sex workers or adult performers, are frightened because their only lifeline, which was online forums to be able to share critical information, has been taken away. And now they don't know how they're going to assess and verify the reputation of clients or share information about people who might be dangerous. So it's a very scary time for them.
So if Intimate, if you had a product that was available right now, would this event, this law signing in the U.S., would this be a massive market opportunity or an absolutely scary legal risk?
Really good question. We're not really directly involved with this because, we're not involved with the sale or provision of any of these types of services. What Intimate is set up to do is to be essentially like a PayPal for the adult industry, but every aspect of the legal adult industry, which is those entities that are able to file for tax but unable to get a bank account, and PayPal won't deal with them. So for us, for things like that, we don't host anyone's content or anything like that. So we kind of sit at an arm's length to this whole thing, but it's obviously extremely important to us still because I think this whole debate comes back to safety, and that's what we really stand to try to achieve for this industry: trust and safety. I mean, it all starts with payments, because at the moment, if people can't safely and securely accept payment for their for their services. I mean, like you can't run a business. But once you've been able to establish that, then our reputation system starts to kick into play. So I think this is one of the main things that people ask us is, well, why do you need a new token for the adult industry? Why don't you just use a privacy coin like Bitcoin or Monero or Zcash or Dash or even just Cash? Where Intimate is different is that we have this reputation system, and it is the first time that someone has ever applied a system of recognition and reward to be able to uphold good actors within the system. And what that's designed to do is really establish safety. I kind of liken it to what Uber did to personal transport. A lot of people will usually have a story about how it was never very pleasurable to get a taxi because taxi drivers weren't very friendly, and they basically had no incentive to look after you. But these days, you jump into an Uber and, somebody's got a bottle of water ready for you and they want to know what radio station you want to listen to, and they're asking you about your day and how you're going. And it's because their behavior is linked to reputation.
Yeah,
and if they don't uphold their reputation, yeah, exactly. If they don't uphold their reputation, they could lose their job. But what this has done is transform the experience for everyone involved. So reputation is really, really powerful. The problem is, I think we've seen what reputation can do with systems of trust, like Uber and Airbnb and eBay. Like, think about eBay without its ratings and review system, it would be a scammer's paradise. I mean, that's essentially what the adult industry is now. But the problem with these systems is they're all centralized. So, if I've been using Uber for years and I've got a 4.9 star rating, but I want to go on my first international trip and I want to stay at someone's house overseas, I can't transport my Uber rating over to Airbnb to prove that I'm actually a good actor. So it would actually be really powerful if we could build these systems of trust to be industry-wide and allow people to actually be good actors across various segments of various industries. And that's what we're looking to do with Intimate, where you could have this reputation system attached to the currency that you use across all different types of products and services in the adult industry to ensure that actors industry-wide are incentivized and recognized for their good behavior.
I was just thinking of like how the climate of politics and the planet really does seem to be linked in this strange way. With that. And so I'm wondering if in England you're noticing is there any movement towards passing similar laws that crack down on the freedom of the internet under the guise of stopping sex trafficking?
Yeah, I think we're seeing it everywhere, aren't we? It's kind of a scary time to be alive. I feel a little bit like we're going backwards at the moment in progress. I don't know what's causing it. That's something that you could probably debate for hours and hours and hours, and essentially it would come back to opinions. But I think for all the progression that the internet has done for us in opening up these peer-to-peer economies and challenging trust. I mean, these days, I just read an article the other day that someone was saying there was a sentiment vote done, and people were saying that they trust Satoshi Nakamoto more than the U.S. Federal Reserve.
Goodness.
The idea of the idea of trust today is really being warped. But I also think that there is kind of this idea of anti-establishment ideals. They're kind of bubbling up from underneath, and as much as people are pushing towards these new systems of trust, and perhaps we don't trust the same old trusted intermediaries that we used to. Perhaps banks and governments aren't all what they were cracked up to be, and perhaps there is a new way to live. But there's also this push against it, this kind of this traditionalist perspective that I think is very much fearing the potential for people to be able to rise up and revolutionize this. So that everything I just explained then sounds like it's all driven by blockchain. I don't believe that's the truth. But it's kind of a weird time that we're living in, where we're seeing some people really pushing for something new, and other people pushing for an old ideal, which I would have thought was archaic and outdated, but seems to hold true in a lot of people's minds.
Well, and one thing I always can remember is the more we see, this one extreme, we know that there's just as an extreme opposing view that's getting formed. Which, yeah, it is kind of a scary and just going backwards sometimes. And you're going to be exposed to a lot of these trends, I'm sure, because of this industry you're bringing a solution to. Give us a sense of the timing here, like how like you guys just finished a fundraise, but you're going to be opening up a public ICO, and then give us the roadmap of when people could expect to see like some actual product here.
Yeah. So we raised 5.5 to date. Our hard cap is 16.85. We closed our pre-sale on the 28th of March, and our public sale opens on the 26th of April. And that will run through to the 7th of June. We were only going to do it for 2 weeks, but the market's obviously a bit soft, so we just wanted to leave it open a little bit longer for people to allow for global participation. The other thing is, too, that we've been really good at being able to capture quite a mainstream market, and also a lot of people within the adult industry who have been following crypto for a while and seen how it could bring amazing benefit to their life, but they haven't got their ERC20 wallet yet, and they haven't bought Ethereum before, so they need a little bit more time to be able to figure out how they're going to get into this market. So at the moment, we're actually helping a lot of people within their first steps, and being a bit of an educational mouthpiece, which we're really proud of too. Because we do think that that's important to bring crypto to the masses and make it as understandable and safe as possible. We practice safe sex as much as we practice safe crypto.
There you go.
But in terms of the roadmap, so soon after our launch, we will have some of our platform partners accepting intimate tokens as payment, and we will be rolling that out in the months that ensue. So at the moment, we've already got a bit over 30 payments integration partners, as well as off-chain oracles confirmed as our partners. So just to clarify, the off-chain oracles that we work with could be everything from, say, ID verification, or even things like sexually transmitted infection health check information that could be added to your pseudonymous profile. The reason you might want to do that is because we're all about driving a sex-positive conversation. And in the future, say in dating, imagine if you had a pseudonymous profile where you were encouraged to build your reputation by being a good actor on the network, but also doing things like regularly uploading your STI health checks. And that could help you be more attractive to potential suitors who want to see that you do disclose that information on a regular basis. So we think that's pretty cool. We've got well over 30 of those partners already signed, and you can find them all on our website at intimate.io. But yes, we'll be rolling out pretty aggressively within the first year for our payments integration and Oracle partners. The reputation system, which I personally, that's what really fascinates me about what we're doing at Intimate. I think that's the really groundbreaking stuff that kicks in around year 3, when we have our really solid international ecosystem of payments integration partners. And that's when we can build out our web of trust, which essentially allows people to start interacting with each other, understanding how they can assess each other's reputation based on how they've been interacting with the network over time. But the roadmap's all on the website too, so if people want to be able to check it out, it's on our website and also in our white paper.
And that's intimate.io.
That's
Leah,
it.
Leah, I feel like just the fascination with this topic, how it really touches so many parts of the fabric of our culture, our economy, our morality, our standards, our repressions. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves. Are there any I know it's getting really late for you there, but just as a final kind of close, is there any things that you've been surprised by over the course of bringing this to market?
Yeah, so many things. I think Probably if it was about being surprised, I've actually seen that. I mean, I always thought I was pretty open-minded, but I actually think pretty much everyone out there is pretty open-minded. What I have seen is that a lot of people fear what other people will think. And it's quite funny when you get people coming up to you and going like, oh, hey, I can't tell my friend, or I can't tell, my investor syndicate, or I can't tell my partner, but I love what you guys are doing, and it's the best use case application I've seen, and you guys are going to achieve my scale adoption, and it's the best, and I'm going to put some money in secretly.
But don't tell anybody.
Yeah, but don't tell anyone. But then their best friend and their partner will come over, and and then their partner in business will come over and tell us all the same thing, and it's like, this is so weird. Like our society has such a strange relationship with sex, but we all interact with it. None of us would be here if it weren't for sex. And there's a real opportunity to, I think, kind of take a lead in this space and make it okay for people to approach these topics and break down the barriers and the stigma that are currently excluding people from the market. And if we can do that successfully, I mean, firstly, I think there's a lot of profit to be made, but there's also a lot of benefit for people's lives. So whether that's how they view themselves and how they build their identity, how they interact with their partners, how they interact within the workplace, and also just how they understand their own pleasure and things like stress release and their own health. So sex really does underpin so much of our lives, and I think if we can just release a lot of people from the shackles of morals and stigmatization, we're going to see a lot of good in the world.
Well, Leah, thank you very much for coming on Coloring Crypto. Thanks for staying up late tonight in London, and good luck with your Intimate ICO upcoming.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Gabe. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks a lot, Leah. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Subscribe now.